This room seems a little large for what we're trying to accomplish today. I don't know, you may or may not have caught our panel yesterday morning, but we decided to take advantage of an empty session slot to get people together to talk about a topic that we think is really important in terms of helping sustain our ecosystem, and that is supporting the open source maintainers and project leads. So we decided to get folks together for a little bit of what we call like maintainer group therapy. And really what we want to do is get folks in smaller groups to discuss, issues and topics, and hopefully come up with some ideas for how we as a community can better support these folks who are doing so much work with us. So Tracy, how do we want to do this? We want to say groups of 5 or 6?
Yeah, so it can just be the people closest to you, or if you happen to know someone that's like with a project that you're stoked on and want to help with that idea. So we're just going to end up pulling everyone together, breaking out into groups of 5 or 6. If someone would like to take notes, they're welcome to in those smaller groups, because that can be a really nice thing to pass along. And then after, do we say 15 minutes?
Yeah.
We're going to ask that somebody from the group come up and share what, sort of like what you've come to and how we can help.
Yeah, so if we can ask you all to kind of pull in if you're interested in participating, so no solution here that we're going to, exactly try and drive at today, but hopefully get a lot of great ideas in terms of supporting each other and, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool. Okay, Node Interactive. Maintainer therapy. Awesome. Everybody that came here and talked a bit with other folks. So our group was comprised of maintainers, mentors, contributors, which was Tracy, Rich, Dan, Michelle, and Darcy, these fine folks right here. So we outlined a couple, or at least we griped and groaned over a number of similar pains that we were seeing, obviously, in our work in the community. Primarily, it came down to communication, the expectations that we have or that we don't have or don't communicate with consumers of our projects around scheduling, time that we have and time that we can give back and actually invest in the projects that we put out there into the open. Also, we don't really communicate about the contributors, or we see a gap there in the communication about the contributors and their own commitments and their sponsorships and potentially the entities behind them that might support them and the work that they do. This is essentially something that we noticed is a gap right now, potentially something that we could work on or come up with ideas to bubble up or maybe create tools to identify these within projects so that we're communicating better with people that want to use our libraries or work within open source and contribute back and help work with us. We also identified some issues with privilege in terms of some folks have time, some folks don't have time to actually be contributing back to open source initiatives, and also demographics, as well as trying to advocate for that time back to whoever our stakeholders are, wherever they live, whoever they are, the business value and getting time to collaborate. We did identify things that were good, essentially like tomorrow's session, the code and learn is a good opportunity for people that may not have that privilege or may not have that time to reinvest in open source, double down and get involved. But yeah, that's essentially where we got to. And cool, these are slides. They used to have little particles in the back, but I didn't get time to. I'm like, come on. It's not bad for like no time. Cool. Did you guys come to similar conclusions, you folks? Yeah?
All right. So this was fun. And so what was considered helpful in the group over there, y'all. Having explicit expectations for contributors, including using things like GitHub templates, having special labels like need info and not responding to things until the info is added, closing issues after 21 days if nobody's responded. This is stuff that Kai has used on ESLint. And then Gregor had some good points to make about automation, like making sure that there's no rules lawyering by trying to automate the things that you require. And that nitpicking can be done by bots, like having a syntax suggestion, but praise should be done by humans, which I agree with. And that a big pain point is retention of users. You put a lot of effort, both work and emotional effort into onboarding users, and then they go away. And so maybe what we need is something like a CRM for contributors so that you can nudge them to come back, see what they're doing, remind them about the project. It was pointed out that a great way to retain people is to empower them, to give them explicit instructions about how to level up, going from one single pull request to being a contributor to being a maintainer, giving them permission to do those things. But at the same time, Boaz pointed out that avoiding tribal knowledge is really important, like making people feel like they don't have to be an insider in order to contribute. Maybe having a mentorship chain where after someone helps you make your first pull request, you're asked to go help someone else while the knowledge is still fresh in your head. And then, of course, really important to have a succession plan for maintainers and explicit issues of, hey, you can start right here. That was it. Thanks to everybody.
I'm just going to read off my notes. So one of the first things we came up with is we need to figure out how to sell our projects to more people, which is effectively doing outbound marketing. We have, I think, inbound marketing is somewhat solved with these things like Hacktoberfest and upforgrabs.net. If you guys haven't heard of that, this is pretty good. And just having labels like new contributors only or first contributors, things like that. And then having more than just a bare minimum contributing info within your repo. So having issue templates, detailed contribution guides, having CI on your project. What a concept. Documenting more of maybe the background, the story, the first principles of the project and why it was created. And another thing that can help in getting new contributors is when they're coming in, maximizing the time you have with them. And so if possible, have that time face-to-face and synchronously block both of you on that so you get the most value of that time instead of this sort of back and forth over chat or email, which could last days, weeks, months, even for just a single issue. And the last thing is, I guess, getting more non-technical folks to help out on projects with things like doc writing, marketing, etc. That's it.
Yeah, so our conversation was kind of a little more meta level. We weren't really talking about like specifics of like how we can encourage this or like where the pain points are. We kind of focused a lot more on just like the disconnect from people who are contributing for the first time, possibly have never contributed or are just reporting bugs, issues, but are like not open source maintainers in the classic sense, and maintainers themselves, and just we have such a different set of experience. Like for maintainers on our side, we're used to contributing and things like that all the time, and so for us the barrier to entry feels really low, especially for opening up, say, a pull request or something like that. But for people who've never contributed, that barrier to entry feels really, really high. Like there's just this huge difference of experience between the two. And so, sometimes there are actual barriers to entry that actually are high, and they just feel low to us as maintainers. But there's also, I think, a flip side to it as well. There's sort of this view, the way it's put that, like people who have never contributed, they see people who have modules published in NPM, and especially if they're part of a big project, that they must be the cream of the crop developers, and that you have to be just really, really talented in order to do that. So people just sort of self-select themselves out of doing that, even though they're totally capable of doing that. And I mean, we don't really have solutions to this, but I think it's really important to understand that there is this huge difference in mindset, and that's kind of what we focused on.
All right, we are totally out of time, but I want to thank everybody for coming to our maintainer group therapy session. It was very ad hoc, but I certainly value the conversations with each and every one of you about your experiences. I'd love to continue that conversation in real life, online, etc. But let's keep the conversation going and keep supporting each other with a generous application of please and thank you, as Erin says. So thanks, you guys.